Hi everyone, my name is Chidibam Nuela Enebechi and I'm a first year PhD student in Industrial Engineering at Purdue University.
And my name is Sydney Serbin, and I am an undergraduate research student with Purdue Polytechnic Institute.
So our presentation today will be on relationship between demographics and career perceptions of manufacturing. So the manufacturing industry in the United States continues to express concerns about talent shortages. And this is hugely attributed to the fact that there's a lot of negative misperceptions that is tied to the manufacturing world. So in order to find out more answers about this situation, industry associates within the Mid-County region of Indiana have come together to create industry-driven initiatives that can help students be more engaged and interact with the manufacturing world. So the main aim of this study is to determine the relationship between students' career perceptions of the manufacturing industry and see how it can be tied to their demographic characteristics. Because you can't deny the fact that our demographics shapes us in one way or the other. It shapes the way that we think or even the thought that we decide to follow when it comes to our career goals and aspirations. So a little background about this topic. So over 2.4 million jobs will be left unfilled between now and 2028 in the manufacturing world. Reports say this is attributed to three main reasons. Number one, the retirement of the baby boomer population. Number two, the shift in skill set, which can be tied to the fact that the world is becoming more technology inclined and digitalized. And number three, the misperceptions of manufacturing jobs, which is where our research hits home. So in order to fix this situation, reports also recommend starting with two main points. Number one, starting early by working with kids in grades kindergarten to 12th grade. From our research study, we also found out that it was easier to influence students in kindergarten than in higher grades. Addressing new skills like robotics, programming, 3D printing, modeling, things to get students get that hands-on experience in the field of manufacturing. So what are we doing? We decided to go early by helping students help address skills in the manufacturing realm. So industry partners within our local community have come together to create Manufacturing Week, where students are exposed to several manufacturing activities, several manufacturing opportunities. What we in our lab do as researchers is we try to sit and analyze our data, and we try to move away from the thought that, these kids are just having fun and they're enjoying themselves. But what does this truly mean? What are we seeing? What is the trend? What is the impact of these initiatives when it comes to seeing the perceptions of these students and answering the main research question that we have is how do these activities influence the perceptions of our students? And again, tying it back to their demographics. So I'm going to pass this presentation on to Sydney to talk about the procedures that were incorporated in the presentation.
Thanks, Nuala. In 2018, Lafayette, Indiana held a week-long activity called Robotics and Manufacturing Week. This industry-led event was involved with local companies such as Caterpillar and Subaru of Indiana Automotive. Students ranged from grades kindergarten all the way through 12th grade and were separated into three separate groups. There were 92 students in grades K through 5, 238 students in grades 6 through 8, and 342 students in grades 9 through 12. In order to collect the data from this event, we gave each student a career perception survey, which was meant to gauge the children's general perception of the manufacturing industry. So what we did is we gave students a survey before the event that had questions on basic manufacturing knowledge. What does it look like? Who does it involve? Is it safe? Does it allow you to be creative? And then they had their week-long event, and then we gave them the same survey at the very end of the event with a few more open-ended responses in order to get a few more detailed responses from them. And in this way, we were able to see how students perceived manufacturing before the event, and then how they perceived the manufacturing after the event. So we could see their perception from just that week-long event. And this is an order to answer the questions like Nuala mentioned before. Does this manufacturing event influence children's career perceptions in manufacturing? And in addition, does gender and ethnicity further influence these career perceptions? I'll hand it back to Nuala, who will go over how we analyze this data.
Yeah, thank you, Sydney. So we used two different sets of two different factors for demographics. We use a gender. For gender, we considered both male and female, and then we use ethnicity. For ethnicity, we considered minorities and Caucasian. So there were two sets of data analysis that were carried out for each grade level. The first analysis was carried out using data from the pre-survey. This was done in order to be able to gauge, just like students had before manufacturing. And then after that, we used the second set of data, which was basically the data after the manufacturing camp, to understand the influence of the manufacturing week on the students' perception. So what we did was, after sorting, we used the pre and the post survey to calculate the delta values. After calculating delta values, we then did a one-way ANOVA test on the IBM SPSS statistical package. And then to gain an in-depth knowledge to solidify everything, we also did more computational analysis on Excel. This helped us to see and gain an in-depth understanding of the impact of each individual question on the children, and seeing the trend and patterns that occurred in each change in their response. So we did analysis based on questions, and we also did it based on groups. So for the results, what we noticed was that we tried to answer two main research questions. The first question was, what is the relationship, if any, between children's perception of manufacturing careers, between their gender and also for their ethnicity? And then the second question was, what is the relationship, if any, between the influence of manufacturing week activities on children's perception on their gender and their ethnicity? So if you notice, the key word that's different between the two questions is the influence. We try to understand what's going on before the camp and also after the camp, which is where the keyword influence comes in. So for the research question one, the results that we found were that the results showed there was no significant difference between ethnicity and their responses to the pre-survey for students in grades K to 12. And then, but we did notice some really interesting things when it came to the significance of relationships in the pre-survey for students in grade 9 to 12. And Sydney will be touching more on this when it comes to explaining other parts of the research procedures and future work. So then also, for the second research question, we noticed that there was no significant relationship between the ethnicity and the change in perceptions for participants in grades K to 12. And there was also no changes in their relationship when it comes to their gender for students in grades K to 12. For the ethnicity, we think this was so because there was not an accurate ratio between minorities and Caucasian, so it was a little bit difficult to carry out a well-rounded statistical analysis. Although we didn't notice a lot of significant differences in the test that we did, we still found some really interesting things based on questions, and Sydney will be sharing more on this when it comes to her section. So this study is basically an ongoing project, and we've carried out a study on this previously. But this time, what we did differently was we added the demographics piece. Prior to this, we didn't have that demographic piece. But what we noticed, what we observed from previous years is that training between industry associates and pre and in-service teachers is very essential, because it makes things more synchronized across the board. It makes the teachers know how they're going to interact with the industry associates, and also make sure that they're saying the same thing to the students, and no information is lost across the way. A study was also carried out on the pre-service teachers, and from the study, it was depicted that a lot of these teachers actually had negative perceptions of the manufacturing industry. So it makes sense where some of the students' negative perceptions are coming from. Because if the teachers have negative perceptions, it only makes sense that that would trickle down and then the ripple effect will occur. So this is something that needs to be fixed. Then age appropriate language. So some industry associates with very high degrees might find it difficult to tailor down their information to students in kindergarten or even like fifth grade. So it was very essential for doing the trainings for teachers and industry associates to come to a common ground where they're able to find a way to relay and connect the information, find a way to make it relatable to students and grades K to 12th grade. The next point is orient the children to the environment, because if the children are not comfortable with the environment, it's hard for them to focus. If there's a lot of distraction going on, it's hard for them to like focus and stay really engaged with what's going on with the activity. Which brings me next to my next point of safety. So even as you're trying to engage, orient the student with the environment, like safety, making sure that they're wearing their helmets if they are going to be doing tours for a manufacturing power plant, making sure that they're being safe. The thing is, you still also industry associates had to also come to a balance where they're sharing information but not scaring, because what we found out from our previous data was that a lot of the students were scared about the manufacturing industry, and this because let's say they're going for a tour, they'll be told by an industry associate, if you don't wear your helmet, something could fall on your head and you could die, and that could easily scare a child away from the manufacturing world. So then the next point will be environments could be intimidating for young children. When working with kids, it's very, very, very essential to think about the environment. For example, like if they have to go to the bathroom and they have to pass a really dirty and noisy area, it can be really scaring for the kids, and that can potentially deter them away from pursuing um, careers in the manufacturing world. So I'm going to pass the presentation back to Sydney, who will give us more lowdown about this research study.
Thanks, Noella. So, as mentioned earlier, Manufacturing Week 2018 held a total of 627 students in grades K through 12. In this event, they were able to learn manufacturing topics such as lean manufacturing, supply chains, problem solving, and leadership. And based on these topics that all of these students learned, and from the data collection and analysis that Noella just mentioned, we were able to gather some recurring themes that we noticed. For instance, there are majority positive perception changes. So most questions going from pre to post survey had a positive perception change. And this indicates that each activity helped to change students' perceptions for the better. So this positive perception change means that students could either go from the negative strongly disagree to a neutral, or even a neutral to an agree. But however these students answered, they went from a more negative view to a more positive view. When we look at the more gender-based issues, we noticed that females found manufacturing less safe in grades K through 2, and that fewer females felt encouraged to pursue manufacturing careers in grades 6 through 8. Additionally, when we moved on to the ethnicity-based, we noticed that minority children had a less rounded perception of the manufacturing industry in grades 6 through 8, and minority children did not think a career in manufacturing would enable them to be creative in grades 9 through 12. So with these recurring themes that we have observed from our data collection, we want to move forward with this and make data-informed decisions. So we have Manufacturing Week has been a yearly recurring event. And so with each event, we want to take our data and make decisions to either improve the survey or improve the activity itself. So depending on what feedback students gave us, we want to make sure that we address that feedback. For example, in the graphs on the lower right-hand corner, Our greatest changes across grades were the questions, I would consider a career in manufacturing, and I have been encouraged to consider a career in manufacturing. So just for example, we want to take those two questions and great, that's a positive perception. People have been encouraged and would consider. How can we inform this in our future decisions? Additionally, we want to create a regional expansion to increase the sample size to include students from different regions. So right now we are in a primarily Caucasian, very manufacturing-driven community. So we want to be able to expand our test locations so that we can get data from different sets of groups in different areas and regions. Additionally, we noticed that a connection to personal stories adds authenticity to everyday careers. So we noticed that employees telling these students about real world instances with their jobs really help these students connect with employees and imagine themselves in their position and be able to think about how they would be in a manufacturing career. And finally, we noticed that there is a need for real world association and language when it comes to teaching children manufacturing. So you can give a first grader any sort of technical jargon that'll go in one ear and out the other, but we want to make sure that we're teaching students these manufacturing topics in ways that they can truly understand and make sure that we give them real world examples so that they can follow along. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We would like to thank our amazing advisor, Dr. Greg Strimmel. We would not be able to do this without him. Also, special thanks to Wabash Heartland for funding this project and to Greater Lafayette Commerce for their great collaboration. Thank you again.
Thank you.